Well, I graduated from high school in 1954 in Union, South Carolina, and things were in Union, South Carolina wasn't too good in 1954 because there wasn't any job for people who had just graduated from school. And I had just graduated and I hung around for a couple of months. I said, I need to do something because I've been living on my daddy for 18 years. And my cousin came to me and said, let's join the Navy. I said, oh man, I ain't want to join the Navy. I looked around, he was gone. And so I stayed around for a couple of weeks and I said to myself, you know, that might not be a bad deal for me to go and join the Navy. And I went and joined the Navy. And first I went to the Navy recruiter. And I made excellent grades on my marks and stuff on my...
Was it the ASVAB?
Huh?
Was it the ASVAB?
I guess that's what it was. I don't know because I wasn't that familiar with the military then. But I made great marks because the recruiter told me, he said, man, you ought to do great in there. He said, you made some of the highest scores we ever saw. Well, when I got to boot camp in Great Lakes, Illinois, well, before that happened, when I went to volunteer, then I would have to go down to Columbia, South Carolina, to Fort Jackson, being inducted in the Army. Well, they gave me a ticket to go to Fort Jackson, but the bus had to pick me up in Union and take me 27 miles east of there to go to Spartanburg to catch the bus, and they came right back through Union to take me down to Columbia. So I got down to Columbia, it was just about night. They didn't take me directly to the base and they didn't take me to a hotel because black people couldn't live in a hotel in Columbia.
Wow.
And so they took me to a black rooming house, and they had been using that apparently for black recruits to come in. And I spent the night in that house. The next day they came and picked me up and took me out to Jackson, and that's where I was inducted. Well, I spent the day around there, and they took me to the train station, and I got on the train that took me down to Atlanta, Georgia, and I got on the train from there and went all the way to Great Lakes, Illinois.
Wow.
Overnight trip. But I did it because I didn't find, it wasn't any employment there for me, and the chances are I wouldn't be able to go to school or anything because my daddy and my mama had 7 children, and I didn't want to put my daddy through that. He was a small man in stature, but he provided well for us. My daddy weighed 112 pounds when he went to be examined for the Army, but he provided for us, so I said, I'm not going to stick around here and be a burden on him, so I just volunteered for the Navy. As it turned out, over the period of 4 years which I volunteered, it turned out to be a very good decision that I made. And there were a lot of positive things that happened to me in boot camp. There were a lot of things that wasn't so positive, but you know, I wasn't the kind of person that dwelled on a lot of stuff. And boot camp went along pretty smooth. After I got out of boot camp, and you know, boot camp is boot camp, so far as military is concerned, but after I talked to some of the other guys that went to boot camp, the Navy wasn't so bad. My first, and I guess we're going to get ahead of you, but that's the main reason why I joined, was because my daddy and I didn't want to be a burden on him.
Okay. So what was the overall, I guess, opinion opinion of African Americans in Union and then also in the Navy when you joined?
Well, African Americans didn't do too well in Union because they just had certain jobs, and it was in cotton mill town, and they just had certain jobs that they would give a black fella, and so they had all the worst jobs in the cotton mill. They saved them for the black man to work. You know, worked on platforms on the outside in all kinds of weather, and they didn't pay very well. Cause to tell you the truth, I shined shoes for 9 years at my daddy's barber shop, and I would make more money on Saturday than they were making working 40 hours a week. So that just to show you how black people just wasn't able to provide well for their families. Then there were a lot of black women who had to do what they call day work, working in the Caucasian's kitchen, cooking for them and cleaning for them, and that didn't provide ample. And well, in fact, the black women were able to work more than the black men could. Most black men stood on the corners and stuff. They didn't have nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But the black women, they had a job cleaning up, and I'm going to be just right down to it, cleaning up white folks' kitchen
Mm-hmm.
and taking care of, whatever they need to have taken care of. So it wasn't, if a guy worked anywhere on the job, he made $20 a week, he was doing well. Well, heck, I made that in a day shining shoes. I don't know what the black women made working in the white people kitchen, but they didn't pay Social Security for them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go forward just a little bit to 1960, 67 or 68. My aunt worked for a general, retired general, and she went to them and asked them to pay for her Social Security, and they told her if they paid her Social Security, she was gonna have to pay to eat down at the house. So my aunt just quit, and she went home and sat on the porch. And eventually they came and begged her to come back to work. It's a lot of things that went on back in those days. We had what they call old folks home, but black folk couldn't go there. Mm-hmm. If a black person got sick in the hospitals, and if they went over to the white hospital to be operated on, they wouldn't allow them to stay overnight. Their children or something had to come pick them up and take them home. And treat them at home because they couldn't stay in the white hospital. They couldn't go to the nursing home because it was reserved just for old white people. Mm-hmm. We had to pay taxes, just like white people paid taxes, but the tax dollars went for the nursing home there, and black people couldn't go there. Mm-hmm. So, that's one of the things that was going on in the South. And I could go on, but this is not what this is all about.
Did you see improvement when you joined the Navy of overall treatment or?
Of black people?
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't see improvement. And I say this, that I stayed away from Union for 12 years. And when I came back, just like the problem with black people, women working in the white people kitchen, and they wouldn't pay them wages, mm-hmm. and then they wouldn't pay the Social Security. Mm-hmm. So, these were the kinds of things that you worked all your life, but you never had anything you could rely on.
Yeah.
Eventually what happened, the government came in and told them, said, if you don't hire black people in good jobs so they can pay Social Security, we ain't gonna give you our contract. Mm-hmm. So eventually they were forced to do that. But so far as the overall relations between black people and white people, no, I did not see that. Mm-hmm. Even when I moved back, because it can get kind of deep there. The water can get kind of muddy. But when I came back to Union, after I served time in the Navy and I moved to New Haven, Connecticut, and came back, I worked for the post office in New Haven, Connecticut for 5 years, and when I came to Union, they wouldn't hire me to work in the post office. I had to file a discrimination suit against them, and I won it. Mm-hmm. And I worked for the post office in Union for 21 years, and I retired 1992. But I had to file a discrimination suit against them, even though I had all the qualifications. Mm-hmm. So overall, there wasn't, and the reason why there wasn't any improvement because you had two societies there. You had a black high school system, you had a white high school system. Black people lived on one side of the railroad track, white people lived on the other side of the railroad track. You never hardly came in contact with white people. Mm-hmm. Wasn't no fighting going on, but you could, and you didn't even notice that there was a difference because you didn't know that many white people to see how they lived. Mm-hmm. In fact, I was in a play and that they put on there, and the name of the play was Things They Are Changing. This was in 1969, somewhere along there. Mm-hmm. But this guy that taught me in night school, because I went to veteran school when I moved back, and he taught accounting, so he went to see the play one night, and we walked back up the street together. He said, Martis, he said, how in the world did you stand living like that? I told him, I said, well, you know, up until the time I got to be a grown man, I didn't know there was a difference because I didn't come in contact with white people. You know, I was quite happy where I was, and I couldn't have known any different than what was presented to me from childhood. But and even right today, you know, people are struggling with that thing about how we're gonna make the system a whole lot better for both races of people. And it's come down to that. If we don't get along together now, it's gonna be our last chance. I'm 86 years old, and I'll tell you the truth. I have seen time when, well, here recently, you know, time where there could be some changes made, and people are skirted around it. So basically, that's all I can say so far as that is concerned, because we still got a long way to go so far as race relations is concerned.
So, during your time in the Navy, when you were on the USS Forrestal, can you tell us about that?
Well, let me tell you about when I went to my first duty first. My first duty station was at radio school in Bainbridge, Maryland. That's after I left boot camp. And they looked at my scores, and the sergeant who was in charge of, not the sergeant, but the bosun mate, he was chief bosun mate, first class bosun mate, he was in charge of about 80 guys going to school. And we all had to fall out on the ground, and that's a place out there where everybody fall in. And he was gonna call out all the leaders, platoon leaders, squad leaders, and all this kind of stuff. And what it was based on your grades. Well, my name was about the second name that was called. And when he called my name, I stepped out of the crowd. He looked at me and said, you stand over here. He pointed me to stand over to the side. And then he called the rest of them out. And he made them as squad leaders, platoon leaders, all that kind of stuff. And he told me just fall in. This was my first experience with something like that. And some of the white guys said, well, I'll be damned. Said, I've never seen anything, but some of them, you know, from Indiana and places like that, they grew up around black people. And they said they'd never seen anything like that. So then I started going to radio school, and outside of Bainbridge, Maryland, there was a place called Port Deposit, Maryland. It was a little bus stop, and you go in there to catch the bus, but black soldiers couldn't go inside. But I went in there anyway, because I wasn't aware that you couldn't go in there. And me and some white guys went in there together, and I was in that, when I went in radio communication, there wasn't very many black people in that outfit, because it was when they first started integrating the Navy, integrating the armed forces, really. And
about what year was this?
1955.
Okay.
So around January, February 1955, and I went in the bus station there, and they were serving food, and this white girl came over to take our orders. And mind you, most of the places I went to when I first joined the Navy was with white boys, because there wasn't that many black guys in there. And so when I ordered my food, this white girl told one of the white boys, said, you can sit in here and eat your food, but he gonna have to take his outside.
Talking about you?
Yeah, talking about me. And so this boy from Gary, Indiana, I'll never forget him, his name is Murray. He told her, well, hell, if he can't eat here, we ain't gonna eat here. So he said, come on, let's get out of here. But I learned about a lot of that stuff when I was there at Bainbridge, Maryland. I went up to Delaware, where the President of the United States comes from. There was a skating rink out there on the highway out there. Forget the number of the highway. It might have been 301 or something like that. But anyway, I went in there to go skating with a bunch of white guys, and they wouldn't allow me to come in.
Mm-hmm.
So they all got in the car, and I think they, might have got kind of discouraged about taking me different places with them because they was always denying me. I went to drive-in theater in northern Maryland, there, west and northwest Maryland, and a bunch of white guys and myself. We was in a car going in drive-in. They wouldn't allow me to go in the drive-in theater, so we had to cancel that. It's in the same town that the Naval Hospital is, and that's where Jimmy Forrestal committed suicide in that hospital. Mm-hmm. Now I didn't know that later on I was going to have to serve on the USS Forrestal, but he committed suicide in that hospital. But it was pretty rough on a fellow that never been around where he had to mix it up with different races of people like that, and we had to do it because that was edict that was handed down by the President of the United States. So I had to learn places I could go and places I couldn't go. And then most of the time I had to go by myself wherever it was until I learned there was another group there called, we called them the Gumshoes. But there was a black guy in there and we got to be friends. He was from Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. And we got to be friends, and I left there. I stayed in Bainbridge until 6 months after I got up there, and then I had to go to a place called Cheltenham, Maryland, which is outside of Washington D.C. and that's where I was stationed until I had to go on the ship. Mm-hmm. Well, it was very easy on me at Cheltenham because there were places that you could go and there were places you couldn't go, but we learned those real quick, and so we had a lot of fun because the places we went to, I imagine some of the white people would like to have gone, but they couldn't go. Because, boy, we really boogied down. They had a lot of fun. But then I went aboard the USS Forrestal, aircraft carrier, CVA-59. And life on the carrier, so far as a sailor is concerned, was pretty good, but the relations between the black sailors and the white sailors at times wasn't that good. Mm-hmm. In fact, I went on as a radioman in third class, and they put me over a crew. Mm-hmm. And I had a white boy on there that didn't want to get up to come to his watch. We had assignments for the watch, and mm-hmm. he was laying up in the bed and wouldn't come, and he acted like he wanted to jump out and jump on me. So I went back and told my communication officer. And they had to go in there and get him out, but I think they kind of cooled him down a little bit, because I guess he came from up in Ohio, mm-hmm. and he just didn't like the idea of me telling him that he had to get up out of his bunk and go to work. I went on ship. I was third class radioman, and I had to get used to being able to tell white people what to do. Mm-hmm. Even when we would go overseas to ports, and we'd get off the ship and go out on Liberty, and we'd go into places, me and a couple of other black guys that I had become acquainted with, and when we would go in and we didn't feel like this was the right place we wanted to be, and we started walking out the door, and by the time we got out the door, and he was all sailors off the USS Forrestal said, "Blackout!" And we heard it, and so we turned around to figure out who said it, but with nobody say anything. Mm-hmm. But these are the kind of subtle things that happened to you when we was at sea, especially overseas. I never expected it overseas, but it happened, and so that was it. You had to put up with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So how in total, how much time did you spend on the ship? I
spent 18 months in the Sixth Fleet. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So throughout the 18 months, in port, out of port, what were some of your best experiences?
My best?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, My best experiences were when we went to places like Mallorca, Spain, and they had nice beaches there, and we could go out there and swim and have fun. Uh, we went to Nice, France, and I learned about the French Riviera over there. And I had been there about 2 weeks before I got to go down on the beach there. But my best experience was you could go out there on the beach and you wouldn't even have to go in the bathhouse to change your clothes. You could change right on the beach. So people wasn't watching you do anything. You go out there and swim out there in the Mediterranean all you wanted to. We went to the Rock of Gibraltar. We went to Nice, France. Naples, Italy was good because I went to the Isle of Capri. And the Isle of Capri it's got the place called the Blue Grotto. And that's a cave under the island. And they put you in a rowboat and you go under the island and the water goes under there and the water is just as blue as anything you ever saw in there. And that's what they call the Blue Grotto. Mm-hmm. And then you could go above and they put you on a guide wire and a tram chair, and you could go up to the top of the Rock of Gibraltar, and I took pictures while I was up there, but it's way up there, and I enjoyed that. Yeah, I was a little country boy from South Carolina over there experiencing stuff I never thought I would experience and there's a lot to see.
That was gonna be my other question, like, coming from unions, do you ever expect yourself to be going these places?
Oh no, that was something outstanding for me. I tell you, and I took pictures. I bought all kinds of little souvenirs and stuff like that, and brought them back home. In fact, I might be able to find one now. All the rest of them somehow or another got broke or thrown away. You know how it is. Mm-hmm. They're dust catchers anyway. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was really something, man. But I really enjoyed going there. I went to Piraeus, Greece. It was really an experience to go there. I could see. They took me to the Parthenon, and all over the rocks. You see the rock formation. They've been standing there for centuries. Mm-hmm. I went up there and saw those. I went to a little place that they call Knobs Hill. Mm-hmm. Knobs Hill is something that they told me was mentioned in the Bible. I think they said Paul preached from that mountain. But they said, hey, it's nothing but a little hill right outside of Rome. The ruins of Athens, Greece is way up on the mountaintop. The ruins are still there. Mm-hmm. The Parthenon and all that kind of stuff. Well, that was all historical to me.
But you got to see all this stuff at, 19, 20 years old?
Yeah. I was about 19, 20 years old when I saw all this stuff. And I stayed on that ship for 18 months, and we went on a cruise to the Mediterranean. We went all around through the Mediterranean there. We never did get down into Africa. The only place we went to Africa was North Africa, and that was in holding company. We didn't get to go anywhere much there. Mm-hmm. Went in Casablanca and then went up to Port Laude. But then after that we went on a cruise to the North Atlantic, which was kind of stormy. And Asian flu was going around then, and I caught the Asian flu. They had a English aircraft carrier there, HMS Eagle, mm-hmm. and they had to quarantine that whole ship. That was an aircraft carrier, and aircraft carrier, the Forrestal. I was on the Forrestal, and the whole ship's company on there was about 5,000 men. And then when they flew the flight crew on there, it would up it to about 7,500 people. If you have full capacity of 700 people. Forrestal had about 125 fighter planes. We had a whole crew of A3D long-range bombers. Mm-hmm. That carried a 3-man crew, and it was capable of flying from the Mediterranean all up into Russia and back to the Forrestal. And I thought that was kind of amazing too, for a plane to fly off that ship and go all the way up into Russia. And that was quite an experience on that forest star, because when we were underway, they never just brought the planes on the ship and just drove them on there. When you got underway, then the flight crew came from down in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
and they had to fly those ships on the plane. I'm sorry, fly the planes onto the ship,
Mm-hmm.
because it would take you a couple of days to bring those things on there any other way.
Mm-hmm.
But you could fly the whole crew on there in run of 12 hours, And once you got them all on there, you had A3D Warriors, those things, prop planes. All you had to do is just head the ship into the wind, and before you get halfway to flight deck, you was already going.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had fighter planes, and we had four catapults on that, where you could jump off 4 planes, in a matter of seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Across the fantail, they had about 6 cables, about the size of Christopher's arm. But those cables were stretched across the fantail of the ship, and they were spaced. So a plane coming in, he had a hook on his plane, and he would hook one of those cables, and that would stop the plane.
Mm-hmm.
They had a mirror where they could look at it like a rear view mirror on a car, but they could see the flight deck and see the cables on the floor, and that's how they aimed that hook in one of those cables. They could do it at night, daytime. At nighttime, the whole flight deck was lit up. But that, and they had all kinds of safety precautions on that thing. But sometimes they would miss,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd lose the plane overboard.
Mm-hmm.
And we lost a couple of pilots like that. One thing stood out in my mind about pilot going overboard. One of them went overboard, and we looked for him for a while, and it was cold out there.
Mm-hmm.
And we were operating off the coast of Florida. And what we did, the captain was driving that ship around there looking for the guy. He couldn't find him, so he had to call, I guess, one of the officers that was in the command that was in charge of the ship, to find out what to do. Well, they told him just come on back and we'll send the Coast Guard out. And so the captain requested that we be able to stay out there all night and look for this guy. Well, we stayed out there all night long, couldn't find him. The next morning, about daybreak, this guy come floating by the ship on a mat that was on the plane, sitting on that thing. It was sort of like a raft or something, and he had inflated. He'd been out there all night long. And they say he lived, the temperature dropped way down below freezing.
Mm-hmm.
But the only way he survived it, that the water was warm. Now, what does that say is that out in the ocean you got currents just like rivers and stuff. And the temperature of the water was about 60 degrees. And that's the only thing. A prop.
Mm-hmm.
And that thing went overboard, and when they found him with his head still in his helmet. And I got so upset I didn't know what to do, because that's my first time encountering somebody dying
Mm-hmm.
like that. So I was kind of distraught about it, and this white guy came by and he told me, he said, man, you worry about that pilot that went overboard, said, you might well just give up on that, said, cause that happens out here all the time. See, you worry yourself to death. So my outlook on life changed a whole lot about death. It's something that we can't help. So,
Yeah.
But that taught me right then not to worry about stuff like that, because I couldn't change it. And right now, that's my attitude, about so far as death is concerned. It taught me a lot. But the 4 years I spent in there, the best years was when I was on that ship, because I learned a whole lot of stuff about discipline, about doing your duty, carrying out your duties, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got 2 more questions.
Go ahead.
So what did your parents and your friends from back home think about you? 20 years old, traveling the world, you know.
Oh,
Were they jealous?
well, no, they weren't jealous. I don't think they were. My, I think my mama was kind of proud of me. My daddy never showed any emotion at all, but you know, I think he was pretty proud of me too. You know, to know that I was able to go and come like that. And then I got the good conduct medal. They wrote my mom and told her about it. You know, I got an advancement. I got 2 or 3 advancements while I was in there, and had taken an examination for another. But my term is in the Navy had expired, so I never did find out whether I had, was successful with that test. But my highest I went was 3rd class petty officer, RM3. And the exam I was talking about was for RM2. But so for my friends, when I came back home, a lot of my friends was gone. I don't know where they had gone to, but and then some of them who were still there, I didn't want to deal with them anyway because, you know, once you get out of high school, all that stuff changed when you get out of high school. And I know I told Christopher when he joined the Army, I said, you know, those people that you went to school with, they, you know, you all were friends and all that kind of stuff. I said, but you go through life, you make new friends, you know, and sometimes if you pick the right ones, they don't judge you according to how good you're doing. What they do, they judge you according to what kind of human being you are. And so I became friends with a lot of white guys, but they're from up north. Some of their views was a whole lot different from the boys in the South. But, you know, I understand that's the way they were raised, you know, because I talked to Christopher's daddy a lot, you know. Sometimes we talk, he said, well, there's some good ones and there's some bad ones, you know. And I guess it's that way with everybody, you know. There's some good ones and there's some bad ones. But, you know, it's kind of hard for me to understand is why you going to make a difference in us. We all the same. We all the same. If somebody get killed out, oh yeah, let me tell you this. I had a company commander, and he was a 1st class boatswain mate, but he was a drunk. And he was had been in World War II. He had all kind of service stripes on his arm. I imagine he'd been in the Navy about 25, 30 years. But anyway, he was in charge of the company. And he would come in, and I know this is aside from what you asked me, but I just want to tell you this. He would come in drunk every morning. His clothes all dirty and nasty and everything. Shoes not shining, cussing. Every other word or so he'd be. People talking about cussing sailors. He cussing every word or so. So one morning he came in and I don't know, he was sober. And he wanted us all to sit down and listen what he had to say. And you know, this guy, you hardly ever thought about him being serious. He said to us, you think this is the real Navy? Called us a bunch of screw-ups. They even took our company flag from us and made us turn it upside down. So he said, this ain't the real Navy. So when you get out of boot camp, you go out there and have yourself some fun. So that's what the real Navy is about. Go out there and have yourself some fun. I don't know, everybody, different people determine what kind of fun they want to have, but he was just getting drunk. But anyway, he told us, he said, now, the real Navy is when you get out there, sometimes you might, like in wartime, and you go to battling and going on out there, and you see all your men around you, some of them dying because they got shot and things like that, you know. And all the turmoils of wars going on all around you, and you out there fighting and going on fighting for your life. He said, but you know, when the battle is over, and you look around and you see all these guys dead around you, and you still living, the first thing you're gonna say to yourself, I'm glad it wasn't me.
Mhm.
You know, and I take that with me all the time because sometimes people have run into difficulties in life and stuff like that, and you can see the mistakes they're making and everything. I'm just glad it wasn't me.
Mhm.
But so far as all my, just like I said, my immediate family are pretty proud of me. My sisters, my brothers, and all of them. I think they were very proud of me being in the Navy. They never heard of a black man from. I don't know of any other black person my age that had a successful uh, uh, tour of duty in the Navy
From Union.
from Union.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the last question I have is, this probably wasn't common knowledge at the time, um, but according to the NAACP, from about 1920 to 1970,
Mm-hmm.
more black people were killed due to highwaymen, the KKK, and other hate groups in America
Mm-hmm.
than in World War II, the Korean War, or Vietnam. So what kept you motivated for fighting for a country where statistically you were more likely to die walking down the street than deployed overseas?
Well, to begin with, initially I joined the Navy to get away from home and have a way of living.
Mhm.
You understand? I had to have somewhere to stay. I had to have food to eat, clothes put on my back, and that was a good way for me to do it. Uh, and uh, after I served, then when I got out of the Navy, and I started having these problems with civilians not wanting to give me a job, not wanting to give me a chance in life,
Mhm.
and that was very disturbing to me. You know, I took a job at the post office in Union, and I had to file a discrimination suit against them, and they were supposed to be favoring veterans for the job.
Mhm.
I had to file a discrimination suit against them. I won it, but then they started picking at me, and I had to call discrimination. I had to call the people back in to let them know that they're picking at me, and so when the investigator came and he told me, he said, well, I came down here, I want to know what you want me to do. And I told him, I said, you go and you tell the postmaster and you tell the supervisor that I fought for this country.
Mhm.
I spent 4 years out of my life, sacrificed 4 years out of my life for this country, for the freedoms of the people who live here and the freedom we supposed to be protected. I said, you go out there and you tell them that I spent 4 years of my life in protecting this country, and my life is just as important as either one of those people out there on that floor. All of them were veterans.
Mhm.
I said, but my life is just as important as though. He said, yes, sir, Mr. Keenan, we'll tell them. And he went out there and told me, he said, don't you ain't got nothing else to worry about. He said, but if you need me, call me again. But you know, I when I got out of the Navy, I was qualified to work at the airports. They wouldn't hire me
Oh.
because communication. You had to have communication. The airport it's a little more. It's different now than it was then. But you know, I knew teletype. I knew weather mapping. I knew Morse code and all that kind of stuff. But somehow or another, they said they couldn't give me a job. And to look at what goes on today, and you know, over the years, my views about a lot of things, you know, has gotten to the place now that you know I wonder uh, why do we have to go through all these changes in this country,
Mhm.
and all the people who have sacrificed their lives, even when they had segregation in the army. Black people were valiant fighters,
Mhm.
and I've studied the history about it. They're valiant fighters, and they fought to preserve the freedom that we have in this country today. And you can go and read your history book. the Buffalo Soldiers, all the way down through history. Even when black soldiers were fighting with the integrated troops, you know, we held up our end of the stick. And you know, I think maybe there need to be a coming together. There need to be some, and I see a few changes coming now. It's slow, but we need to have a good coming together, because if it doesn't happen, I'm mighty afraid this country is doomed. And the reason for it is because you cannot continue to go down the wrong road. You know, you got to go there and sit down and talk and be sincere about what you're talking about, because, and not only talk, you put that in action. We shouldn't be policemen running around picking out people and killing them just because they walk in the street or jogging along the street and all that kind of stuff. That's not good. That's not good. That's not good for the country. It's not good for when people look at this country have to say.
Yeah.
And you got a bunch of people that want to turn the clock back to the days of the Ku Klux Klan era and Jim Crow era. And I just don't think that can happen and the country can stand. So my vision of things is we're going to have to change. And just like I said initially, there has been some changes made. I don't know if it's going to be fast enough. We got to speed this thing up, because we can't. Either we're going to live together or we're going to die together.